Hello and welcome. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories we're tracking for you. Pope Francis held a brief private meeting with US Vice President J.D. Vance at the Vatican, exchanging Easter greetings. The encounter took place after Easter Mass, where the Pope later greeted crowds in St. Peter's Square. Pope Francis expressed concern over rising global anti-Semitism and condemned the ongoing violence in Gaza during his Easter address. He called for an immediate ceasefire, highlighting the devastating humanitarian crisis, especially for Gaza's Christian community. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said Russia shelling continues despite Moscow's announced Easter ceasefire. Blasts are reported from Russian-held Donetsk during the same 30-hour truce window. The US Supreme Court temporarily blocks the Trump administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan migrants under a rarely used wartime law. The Trump government urges the court to lift the order. Israeli forces continue striking the Gaza Strip, with 54 people reported killed in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Hamas says the fate of an Israeli hostage remains unknown after his guard's body is found following Israeli airstrike. Iran and the United States agreed to begin drafting a framework for a potential nuclear deal after talks. A top US official calls very good progress. President Trump threatens military action if Iran does not swiftly accept a new deal to halt nuclear weapons development. Thousands of anti-Trump protesters take to the streets in communities large and small on Saturday. The demonstrations coincide with the 250th anniversary of the start of the American Revolutionary War. Pakistan deports almost 20,000 Afghans this month ahead of its 30th April deadline for undocumented migrants. The Taliban says 700 to 800 families leave daily as Minister Ishaq Dar consults in Kabul, with up to 2 million more expected. United States Vice President J.D. Vance will be arriving in New Delhi on Monday, April 21st, for a 4-day official visit to India. He'll be received at the Air Force Station in Palam at 10 a.m. with a formal meeting scheduled the same evening at 6:30 with Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the Lok Kalyan Marg. Mr. Vance will be travelling then to Jaipur, followed by his visit to Agra. His visit concludes with departure from India early Thursday morning. India's Ministry of External Affairs says the visit reflects the strength of the comprehensive strategic global partnership between India and the United States. Spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal noted that all key bilateral issues will be discussed and the visit is expected to give a further boost to ties. The Vice President and his family will also take part in cultural engagements during their 4-day visit to India. Following Russia's declaration of an Easter ceasefire, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky celebrated Easter with a message urging citizens not to lose hope for peace. Standing outside Kyiv's St. Sophia Cathedral, he said Ukraine continues to believe in each other and in eventual justice. Well, earlier, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky had accused Russia of faking a ceasefire during the Easter period while continuing its attacks on the front lines. On his social media, Zelensky said Russian forces kept up the advances and targeted Ukrainian troops overnight, despite trying to impersonate a truce. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin attended an Easter service. Meanwhile, in the said service, Patriarch Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church and a loyal supporter of Putin, led the ceremony. Air raid sirens rang out in Kyiv and Kharkiv on the evening of April 19, just hours after President Putin declared a one-day Easter ceasefire in Ukraine. In Kyiv, the sirens lasted around 15 minutes, though no attacks followed. Here's what residents from Russia and Ukraine had to say about the Easter ceasefire.
Я считаю, что это неэффективно.
Потому что?
Потому что я не верю. Украине не верю. Не будет никакого перемирия. Будут обстрелы и так далее. Не нужно. давать передышку. Если давить, значит давить.
Війна, мабуть, не припиниться, можуть припинитися якісь бойові дії на деякий час, але війна, мені здається, що війна не закінчиться так швидко.
To this date, Russia and Ukraine, amidst their war, have had 4 total ceasefires. The first one followed the Minsk agreements in 2014. The second was for the Orthodox Christmas and lasted between 6 and 7 January 2023. The third ceasefire was declared in 2025 and lasted for 30 days from 18th of March to 17th of April in accordance with the Black Sea Agreement. And the fourth ceasefire was declared yesterday by Putin for Easter. Jim Rice, Professor of International Law, is joining us live from Vigan in the Philippines. Jim Rice, thank you very much for being live with us today. What do you make of this ceasefire? What was the intention of declaring it by Vladimir Putin? And on ground now, what do you make of the reports from Ukraine saying that the ceasefire is actually not standing on ground? The ceasefire is being violated as we speak.
Thanks very much for having me on. That's a really good question. I think basically that what Putin is doing is the height of hypocrisy. From the very beginning, the Russian forces have not observed a ceasefire at all. It's basically a propaganda ploy, and I think it's very important, and in such hypocrisy, I think it's very important to note that while Putin talks about humanitarian grounds, on Easter Sunday, just 1 week ago, when people were going to church on Palm Sunday, Putin's forces deliberately attacked civilians in Sumy, killing 35 people and injuring hundreds.
Absolutely. Now, Jim Rice, at the end of the day, of course, where do you see the conflict headed? Do you believe this ceasefire shows that Russia is willing to negotiate? Or is this ceasefire just a sham, as you said earlier, and the war will continue? Where do we see the situation then headed?
From the very beginning, when Trump tried to initiate these talks, apart from Trump putting his finger on the scale and putting pressure on Ukraine and cutting off their military and financial aid and cutting off their intelligence and satellite information, apart from all of those things, Ukraine has acted in good faith. Ukraine has put forward concrete proposals to act on a ceasefire. What Putin has done, in contrast, has basically demanded the complete surrender of Ukraine. These demands are ridiculous. They will not happen. Ukraine can and will continue to fight.
All right, absolutely. And, as far as, of course, now, Professor Rice, once again, coming back to the United States' role in all of this is concerned, what role are they playing now in the negotiations? Do you believe things have hit a stalemate?
Well, that's a really good question. I think just a day ago or so, both Trump and Rubio have come out and made statements, vague statements, suggesting that unless someone, they haven't referred to whom, makes some concrete agreements, then the United States will just withdraw from the entire process. So I think actually this is the reason that Putin called for his fake ceasefire over Easter.
All right, Professor Jim Rice, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on that big story. The United States and Iran are gearing up for a second round of nuclear talks in Oman on the 26th of April, following what both sides describe as constructive discussions in Rome. U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff and Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held rare face-to-face indirect talks at the Omani embassy in the Italian capital. Mediated by Oman's foreign minister, the talks reportedly lasted 4 hours and helped clarify key principles and goals. Araghchi said progress was made and technical teams will now work through remaining issues ahead of the next round in Oman. Let's listen in to what the Iranian foreign minister said.
در ادامه جلسه گذشته این بار هم جلسه خوبی بود و میتونم بگم که رو به جلو هست مذاکرات. ما این بار موفق شدیم در خصوص یک سری اصول و اهداف به یک تفاهم بهتری برسیم و نهایتاً قرار شد که مذاکرات ادامه پیدا بکنه و وارد مرحله بعدی بشه.
While cautioning against premature optimism, he noted a better understanding is emerging between the two countries. The talks marked the highest level engagement since the United States withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal in 2018. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reaffirmed his firm stance against a nuclear-armed Iran.
מחויב למנוע מאיראן נשק גרעיני. אני לא מוותר על זה, אני לא מרפה מזה, ואני לא נסוג מזה. לא.
Well, joining us now is Dr. Wael Awad, the Middle East Affairs expert. He's joining us live from New Delhi, in fact. Dr. Awad, what do you make of these negotiations between Iran and the United States? Could we see a breakthrough soon?
Say there is a breakthrough soon, Uday, because first of all, it is an indirect talk between the United States and Iran. It has been carried out in Muscat. Now the second round has taken place in Italy, and now there will be a third round. These are the round going on, the clear indication that there is an improvement and could be with the coming days more specific of discussing the nuclear issues of Iran, because Iran made it very clear for the United States if they wanted to open a dialogue with them, it should be only concentrating on the nuclear deal. And remember that Mr. Trump, who pulled out of the nuclear deal on his first term, he called it was not a fair deal, and it gave Iran the economic leverage of spending money on some sort of a terrorist organization, according to him. Now, with the Trump in the second term, he feels that he can harass a better deal than his predecessors, so maybe he feels that the negotiation is going to lead to a constructive outcome, and where maybe some people even speculating that we maybe see Trump in Tehran very soon.
Now, these negotiations and these face-to-face talks are very rare, of course, Dr. Awad. What do we expect in the next round in Oman, which are going to be happening this coming week?
And that's what I've been saying. There will be more specific discussing the nuclear deal of Iran, because, see, every round have its own speculations and focusing on the differences between the two sides. And when the United States pulled out of the deal, Iran was saying, now, what makes President Trump, again, he will not do it, or any American president. So they wanted a guarantee from the American side that even if we reach a nuclear deal with the United States and the international nuclear agencies, then there could be some sort of a deal, but who can give the guarantee? And I think these are the logistics that both sides are trying to find out and figure out. So we will not be able to decide or to give you any speculation what could be the round and what could be the outcome. But what we are hearing from both sides, that it is very constructive, very positive, and there are movement forward. So let's see and watch and see what could be the next step.
All of this comes even as the United States President Donald Trump has threatened, Dr. Awad, military action if Iran does not accept a deal soon.
Well, look, I don't think American president is ready for any war. Actually, Mr. Trump, he is more of into a deal maker. He wanted to have a deal. He wanted to make America strong again. He does not want to see American involvement in any regime change by force, which they have been doing it for more than 3 decades. In fact, it started even in Iraq and Syria and Libya and Yemen and even in Sudan and Egypt. So all these have been going on, and President Trump made it very clear that he's not favoring any war. Nevertheless, he would not even go for a war when he thinks that the American interest is at stake. And I think that's what he has been doing in regards to the Yemenis, at least, because he knows that this is the pressure he's applying on the Yemenis. But I don't think he will go for any sort of a war with Iran. It's just a rhetoric, and he realized and recognized that the Iranians are very strong and adamant in any kind of a pressure to sit down across the negotiating table. So he cannot apply the maximum pressure, because the American administration have applied the maximum pressure on Iran economically. But look what Iran, where Iran now as a regional power to respond with, and also as a power which has been able to supply not only the drone planes to Russia, but also they having the ballistic missile and the technology to hit any place, including the Daimona, the nuclear site of Israel. So therefore, there could be a regional war if this is a breakup. So therefore, they want to give more time to negotiation and reach to sort of a deal. But even then, the option of a war is still on the table. Because if we remember, Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, visit to the United States was not in his favor and was not get a good coverage for his trips and trying to persuade President Trump to go for a war against Iran. But I think he surprised him, Trump, with the negotiation is on the table with Iran. So let's see where this will head. And I think the American will be more happy to consolidate within the region now without Iranian war, rather than going for an all-out war.
All right, Dr. Awad, stay with us. We're turning now to more developments coming in this hour. The United States has intensified its military campaign in Yemen, launching 13 new airstrikes on the Houthi-controlled port and airport in Hodeidah. According to the Houthi-run Al Masirah TV, this comes just days after a deadly strike on the nearby Ras Isa oil port, which killed at least 80 people and injured over 171 others. Al Masirah also reports further US airstrikes in the Yemeni capital of Sana'a, killing 3 and wounding 4 more in the districts of Al Tawra, Bani Matar and Al Safiha. Despite the escalation, the Houthis have vowed to continue their operations. The strikes follow President Donald Trump's announcement of a major offensive aimed at deterring Houthi threats to shipping routes in the Red Sea, an artery vital to global trade. Since November, the Houthis have carried out over 100 attacks on the ships they allege are linked to Israel in solidarity with Gaza. Meanwhile, the United Nations has expressed grave concern. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned the strikes may have caused severe civilian casualties and could result in environmental damage, including possible oil leaks in the Red Sea. The UN also noted that the port of Ras Isa is critical for Yemen, handling most of the country's oil exports and humanitarian aid, making its destruction, of course, a major blow to an already devastated nation. Dr. Wael Awad, the Middle East Affairs expert, continues to be live with us from New Delhi. Dr. Awad, how do you view these latest strikes and what do you believe their ramifications are going to be?
Well, I believe that the United States have a different objective in the Red Sea rather than what has been declared. You know, that the United States have been for years trying to have a control on all the global oil and trade passages. And Bab el-Mandeb, which is get into the Red Sea, then the Sinai Peninsula, Sinai Canal, is all very important for the United States to have a total control. And there was a talk of a kind of a military bridge between Djibouti and Africa and also between Aden of Yemen. So therefore, this sort of an attack has been showing that the United States is still keeping its objective alive, and they wanted to make sure that weakening Ansarullah al-Houthis is part of the game of controlling the passage, because what happened is that the Houthis have increased their attack only after the 7th of October, calling on Israel to halt its activities and genocide against the Palestinians, then they will stop. But ever since Israel did not stop him, only for a truce of a short period, then they resumed again. So they have been targeting the Israeli ships and including the trade ships of the United States and Britain because of the taking a war against the Houthis. So I think the Houthis gain an upper hand in this controlling the passage from that side. But we would say that now with the changing scenario in the region, especially with the Iranian talk with the American at one side and also the Russian siding with Mr. Trump in many issues, in whether in Ukraine or in Syria, I think the Houthis are trying to calculate differently now, dealing with the other options they have with dealing with the United States, because I don't see any ground forces of the United States on the Houthis, but continue to bombardment from the sky and weakening the Houthis. And this, if we look at the ultimatum goal, not only for controlling the passage, but I think this will lead to the division of Yemen and breaking into south and north again.
Yes. Do you then see this offensive continuing? But the United States President, of course, has warned of further strikes, of course. Do you see this offensive continuing in the days ahead as well, despite what the United Nations Secretary General has had to say?
Well, I think that's what the American administration and many of the American experts have been saying, that this attack on the Ansarullah in Yemen will continue for weeks to come. So I don't see any, cessation of activities, especially with the ongoing war of Israel and on Gaza Strip and West Bank. So I think at one hand, the Houthis are gaining popularity among the Arab nations, that they are the only people who is defying the American and the Israelis, and they are supporting the Palestinian and their struggle. But at the same time, also they are also recognizing that the Americans are trying to weaken them. But if we look at the arsenals of the Houthis and what they have gained for the last 2 decades of war on them by the coalition forces that led by the United States first, and now again the United States trying to form a sort of a coalition to protect the shipping line from there and end the Houthi control. I think these are all issues has to be seen from the wider perspective of the big power struggle in this part of the world. Because see, what's happening in our region is that the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, the Strait of Hormuz, if these passage which is controlled more than 34% of the total world trade and passage of the oil, there are 21,000 ships pass every year from the Red Sea. There is more than 57 ships a day pass from there. And if that is a good damage, and I think the whole world, not only peace and global peace and security will be at risk, but also trade and the global trade and oil supply lines will be also of a threat to the world. And I think that's where we need to see what is the American objective of continuing the attack on the Yemenis. Is it seriously, it is only the Houthis, or controlling the whole passage, as has been always the ambition of the US?
Yes, well, obviously, as you're saying, the Houthis then, if their popularity is increasing, they're unlikely, of course, to stop these attacks and to stop what they're doing, of course, in that particular region, in the waters there. However, of course, what then is going to be the strategy moving forward? Do you believe these are going to be further strikes on ports, or there could be other action as well, not just in Yemen, but in other areas where they're active too?
Well, I think they are more active in Yemen. The Houthis are able to attack even inside Israel, and the United States knows that what the Houthis are capable of, especially after they have confiscated some of the weapon which has been supplied by the United States to the oppositions and to the government of Yemen. And they have modified those weapons, and especially the anti-ship missiles and all these things, to their own benefit, and they have enough drones as well. So I think they gain the technology, and they gain also the terrain, and that nobody can reach them. With the cheapest kind of expenses, they are able to cause that much damage to the United States. I mean, billions of dollars America will be costing it the war on Yemen, while the Yemenis will be spending millions of dollars only because of their, they have the history, they have the ground, and the American knows that nobody ever, even in history, have been able to defeat the Yemenis, whether it was the coalition that led by Saudi Arabia and Yemen. They failed in many fronts with the American support, with the Western support. And again, now the Yemeni prove it once again that they can be a force to reckon with, and the United States has to deal with them indifferently, and they have to put an end to the war in Palestine. And then without solution to the Palestinian cause, the turbulence on the Red Sea and the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean will be disturbed, and it will be difficult to have a peace in that part of the world.
My thanks to you, Dr. Wael Awad, for joining us with your perspective on that big story. All right, that's all that we have time for on this edition of World Report. We will, of course, continue to bring you more news and updates from around the world right here on NewsX World. Stay tuned.